Today's guest, Aston, is a prolific property investor. He has experience in sourcing properties, completing HMO conversions, working closely with social housing providers, and has most recently moved over to purchasing larger property developments. Aston, my first question to you is, how many deals have you done in total?
So we probably bought about 70 properties in the last 3 years. And we only started in property about 4 years ago.
Which is mental, but it's brilliant. That's brilliant to see. So, and those deals, the majority of them are a certain profile?
Yeah, so pretty much all of them are HMOs.
Yep.
A mixture of 3 to 6 beds. We don't go above the 6 beds just because it adds complexities in terms of planning. We always stick outside Article 4 areas, super simple deals. And we work with supported living providers. So obviously you've got your standard ones at Serco and Mears. Did a little bit in the northeast with Mears, worked with Serco in the northwest. And then we sort of flipped the model a little bit. So we started working with smaller sort of charities and CRCs, housing homeless people, victims of domestic violence. And then now we do sort of bigger blocks. So we've got block of 9, block of 3, and the one we're sat in today in Manchester. And a couple of those are for children leaving the care system, which is quite an interesting sort of, I guess, tenant demographic to be working in. It's different to what we're used to.
Yeah.
They require more support, different ways that you build out the project in comparison to a typical sort of supported living project. Yeah, it's interesting. We've done quite a lot in the supported living space.
Yeah, very rewarding, I'm sure, as well. But let's going a little bit more granular. So you've done all those deals. Obviously, a lot of them are the social housing or the HMO model. Looking at the first deal, what was that first ever deal that you bought? Mm-hmm. What did that look like in terms of the project, the numbers? Do you mind sharing that? Yeah,
of course. So I've got 2 business partners, Adam and Alex. Adam left work and we started deal sourcing. Me and Alex were still in a job. So we then wanted to start buying our own properties rather than deal sourcing all the time. So we obviously had no money. We had no idea how to raise finance. So I actually got my dad to refinance the family home. People might say it's daddy's money, but listen, there was a full loan agreement between us. It's probably more pressure than borrowing. I mean, everyone's cash that you borrow is precious. Like, you have to look after it as if it's your own cash. When it's your dad's money, and he's worked all his life to pay off a mortgage and they just live a nice life, there's a lot of pressure. Yeah. Obviously, my mum was fuming, which is, I mean, she's happier than how she got the money back. But we actually bought 2, so at the exact same time. Right. They were on the same street, a few doors up from each other, and they were both 2-bed terrace houses that we turned into 4-bed HMOs. I think we bought them. This was when you could literally buy houses for like 50k. We were buying it for maybe like 50, 60k, spending 25, 35 on it. That's when refurbs for HMOs were a lot lower than they are now. And then we sold them both overseas into Hong Kong, and we probably made about 30k profit on each. So we were sat in jobs, deal sourcing a little bit, but then as soon as we made the profit on those, we thought, right, this model works. Now let's properly go into it and see how many we can do.
Which, no wonder, if you suddenly see that money coming in, you're thinking, right, I've got the proof of concept, I can go and do this.
You've never seen that money before in your life.
No.
It's like, oh, wow, it's crazy.
How was deal sourcing for you? Was that still worthwhile? Was it profitable?
Yeah, it was the best strategy you can do to start, in my opinion. I'm not a massive fan of rent-to-rents. Best strategy we could have done, we learned how to speak to agents, learned how to network, learn how to sort of like negotiate on purchase prices and things like that. So yeah, deal sourcing was great. We did find it quite tough from a standing start. We sold a few deals straight away, but the cash flow just wasn't there for us at the time. We didn't have the momentum to be selling 4 or 5 a month. We were probably selling 1 a month, which will cover Adam's wage, or sometimes not even cover it, because as you understand, if Adam's going back and forth to a property every day, over the time where you actually get paid I think we only got paid $2,500 for our first deal. You probably spent more in petrol.
Yeah.
So it works for us, and we do it now, but it's not super, super easy to build that momentum, but when you've got it, it's the perfect strategy.
And those first deals, did you get them through talking to agents, or were they off market, or?
Yeah, they were off market. Agent in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Still speak to them today. They were doing quite a lot of Mayor's projects at the time. So we just said, listen, we're looking at buying, and they said, we've got 2 here.
Yeah.
And we just straight away, the numbers worked. So then we was like, right, we need to find a cash.
Yeah.
And then obviously went down the route of family. Being resourceful, like people have loads of people around them that have got cash, but if they don't know what you do or what you're looking for, they're never gonna sort of give you the cash in the first place.
That's it. Yeah, they need to understand what you're doing, and they need to know that they can trust that you're going to take that money and obviously return it to them safely, right?
Yeah, and I think security is massive for investors. Like, we've raised probably close to 10 mil in finance now, and the biggest thing for us is every bit of money that comes to us, we treat it as if it's our own.
Yep.
And security is massive. Like, having loan agreements, having joint venture agreements. We spoke before about personal guarantees and maybe charges on properties. You need to make the investor feel comfortable, or there's just no point in having a conversation.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that's where a lot of people are kind of new to raising finance, but when you're getting started, there's a couple of things you've said there that are really important. One, you just don't know who's around you that has that kind of level of money, so you need to start thinking about that. And then 2, you need to think about what can you offer them, which makes it almost like a no-brainer in terms of security, in terms of the offering. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
So, in terms of, so let's go back to your deals, right? So I know this from listening to you on other podcasts, that you obviously have gone out and you've started, I think, sourcing properties. Through sourcing properties, you've met an investor, and I think you found a property for him. He's then, or you've created a joint venture with him, or a partnership and a company with him. He's injected the business with some money and said, right, let's grow this, let's do this quickly. When you were, I guess, going out and starting that business, what does that look like? Obviously, because now you're kind of going from doing 1 or 2 to now scaling up quickly. Who's in the business? You know, where's your attention going and your focus is?
Yeah, so our investor's big on making sure all the processes are right. And his aim was to build a team where we could go away for 6 months and leave the business and it'd still run. He's got a tech background, so he's massively focused on being able to exit a business. Obviously, exiting a property business is probably not even possible in a lot of cases. But we needed to make sure that we weren't doing all of the legwork, so we could focus on other things, such as raising more cash or finding more deals. So we brought in someone that looked after the admin, a project manager in-house, operations manager, acquisitions manager. We've got a finance guy that works for us in-house. And then you've obviously got myself, Adam and Alex. I think we had another project manager on board full-time at one point. So the team built out pretty quick, that then enabled us to, me, Adam and Alex weren't always going to a refurb and thinking, where do we need to go next? We got it to the stage where we could buy a house, but we could find a house, buy a house, refurb it, lease it and sell it without me, Adam or Alex knowing, other than sending the money from the bank account.
Really smart.
Yeah, and it's good. Obviously, there's certain considerations that in hindsight, maybe we would have done it a little bit slower.
Okay.
Your cash flow, you know, our overheads went from, say, 150 grand a year to £500,000 a year. So to even make any money, you need to make £500,000.
Right.
So your overheads will go up. Your cash flow suffers a little bit. So you need to make sure there's constant business and cash flow coming into the company.
Yep.
So certain considerations, but yeah, if you want to scale, you've got to build a power team of people that are better than you at everything. We're not great at anything. We're good at putting people that are good at their job in positions.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about the planning process, for example.
Right.
But I've got a good friend that I can ring up and speak to about who's a planning consultant.
Yeah.
And that's the key, just building a good team.
I think that's really interesting to hear, because there's some people out there that say, look, you know, you're going to have strengths and weaknesses, so you need to work on your weaknesses. Whereas I've always thought you're going to have strengths and weaknesses, so I'm just going to double down on the strengths, and I'll try and find someone that can help with the weaknesses. And that's basically what you've done there, and built a model in which, like you said, you don't have to be part of every deal, which would be the bottleneck otherwise, wouldn't it? So I also know, obviously, that when you got that money and that business partner on board, you then went out with I think you said the plan of buying one house a month, and you ended up buying 5 a month?
Yeah, so we had, He wanted us to scale to a house a month for 12 months, 12 properties over the year. And I think we bought 5 in the first month, and it just kept rolling. So we ended up buying about 50, 60 properties over the year. So yeah, it just scaled crazy.
And what are the, I mean, it's probably a little bit obvious, but what are the main problems you come up against? I'm assuming, obviously, deal finding, refurbs, obviously, managing the finance. Is there any other problems there, or are they the main things?
They're probably the main things. Refurbs is the biggest.
Yeah.
Each job is probably 40k refurb. And at any one time, there's probably anywhere between 6 and 10 HMO refurbs going on at once.
Right.
So managing builders, always staying on top of your cash, you know, if invoices are coming in, can we pay that? Like, can you pay it from a cash perspective, but also is the build up to the right place where we can pay the builder? Because you don't want to overexpose yourself, where builders takes the money and walks off the job. So you learn things like that very quickly. Yeah, refurbs was a big one to manage a lot of projects like that. I think we were 24 at the time. It's, you know, it's something that it's not easy to do, but you just learn on the job, and you're going to make mistakes. We made so many mistakes. We've lost money in so many different ways that we didn't even think you could lose money.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you live and you learn from your mistakes, and you just got to keep cracking on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that as well. So looking at your portfolio right now, do you mind sharing how many like HMOs you've got right now, for example?
Yeah, so we own 26 HMOs at the minute. We've never taken on debt. Well, we actually spoke a minute ago. We've taken on one bridging loan, and we only took that on 2 months ago. Everything's been financed cash, refurbs cash, from investment money. Obviously, there's a little bit of interest going back to the investor, but he's also a shareholder in the company.
Yeah.
So the HMOs ranging from 3 to 6 beds, as I mentioned earlier, all for supported living. So at the moment, we're working closely with local councils, doing it in a sustainable way where we're not just wrapping a 20-year lease on the property and getting ridiculous rents. We're raising housing benefit claims to the council. They're replying with questions. We're speaking to them about what sort of support each tenant's going to get. Gets to the stage where you actually know the tenants. You know, it's nice. We're doing a big sort of stabilisation across the portfolio at the minute, where we're just increasing occupancy, increasing rent roll and cash flow, but also making sure that you're looking after the tenants. Because, I mean, the tenants are homeless, domestic violence victims, ex-drug addicts, and making sure that they've got a good place, good home. So yeah, it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah, they're quite vulnerable people, aren't they, that you're working with? Do you have someone in the team that kind of manages that element of it specifically?
So again, going back to doing what we're good at, we outsource that to a specialist management agent. They're not just a management agent, specialise in supported living.
Right.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
So they raise the housing benefit claims for us.
Yeah.
They employ support workers that we pay. They do the management and the maintenance. Obviously, we pay for that.
Yeah.
We've not got a lease wrapped around it, but we think it works better. It's sustainable. So yeah, we outsource things that we're not good at and let other people take care of it.
And I guess for anyone that hasn't seen you talk before, would you mind just touching on why that model possibly works better than the social housing leases that are out there? Because they're being talked about a lot right now, very hot topic.
Yeah.
And I know you've had a lot of experience in them. Would you mind sharing your experience in those? Yeah,
of course. I think it's almost become like the new crypto, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone, especially in the property world, everyone's speaking about it.
Yeah.
And listen, it's a good model. You help people out, which is great. It's a win-win because you're investing in a product where you can also help people out along the way. However, we were cash flowing a healthy amount, a good return on the properties that we owned on a 20-year lease where they looked after the council tax, the bills, the maintenance, management, and we were getting a guaranteed rent on that contract. And what people don't understand is there's probably 3 contracts that have actually got worth the paper they're written on. All of the other contracts aren't even worth the paper that they're written on, the leases, because they're essentially just a limited company. Whether they're a charity or a CIC, it doesn't really matter. They're still a business. So if they go into liquidation, that lease agreement, even if you've signed it for 20 years, you might be 2 months in, goes out the window. It's not worth anything. And so we got to the stage where we did our due diligence, background checks on the provider. They were the biggest homeless CIC in the country. It's one of the biggest REITs, which is a real estate investment trust, basically a fund. And what happened was they weren't filling the properties with tenants, which means that they weren't claiming rent from the council. But under their contract, they still have to keep paying me my guaranteed rent. So this then gets them into a sticky situation when they've got 4,000 units. And it got to the stage where they couldn't afford to pay rent to some of the biggest funds. And the biggest funds say, listen, you either pay the rent or we're going to wind you up. And so they basically put them into liquidation. Our leases are ripped up. We go from about 40 grand a month cash flow net to zero overnight. Our overheads are 30 grand a month.
Yeah.
And it puts you into a sticky situation. So
big time.
We like the model we're doing now. It's sustainable. We're working on like demand-driven councils. Working closely with the councils and making sure that we're able to fill the properties and give them the right support.
We talked about, well, a few different things, gone in a few different directions, but where I want to go next is, you obviously don't keep all of your HMOs. You've mentioned there, obviously, selling them on. Could you talk to me a little bit about that? Because I know that you do fun things with yields and that. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting model. You're essentially selling it as a business. So it's value, because it's got, and again, this goes back to the sort of the full lease model, because it's got a lease on it. Obviously, we only sort of believe in that model now when it's certain providers that are actually government funded. You would essentially sort of suppress the yield. So say we were buying it at 10% net yield, somebody would buy it at like 7%, 8%. Obviously, that fluctuates with interest rates. Back in the day, we were selling at like 7.5%. Now people are wanting 10%. So your margins sort of get squeezed. But it's an interesting model. We used to sell quite a lot just to build up a cash pot to do more, which is obviously important to us as a new business that we're starting. And then we sell these overseas through agents into Hong Kong was probably the biggest market. A lot of Hong Kong buyers, and even people down in London, people that have got money, don't know what to do with it. Back then they were getting like 1-2% in the bank. And you could buy buy an asset, which is essentially a company, because of the sort of lease that's wrapped around it. They would buy that at a good return in comparison to what they were getting in the bank. And I think it's important to note that the properties that we sold with a lease in place, when that lease obviously came to an end because of the whole liquidation process of the provider, something that we think makes us different is we actually care about everybody that we work with. Everybody's friends, investors are friends. We just sorted all those properties out for them for free. Didn't charge them any time costs. It took us months to do. No time costs, no fees for putting a new lease in place or sorting it out or reselling it. We just sorted everybody out just to make sure that everybody was sound. And you've only got one reputation, don't you?
Yeah, we weren't left high and dry then, I guess.
And even though it wasn't our fault, it's out of our control, but you still got to look after people at the end of the day. So it's an interesting model. We don't really do that anymore. Maybe one or two here and there. But now we're just looking to retain and build the portfolio. So
with that in mind, you've got the 26 HMOs. You've now moved on to obviously doing 2 or 3 larger projects. Not 2 or 3, it is 3 larger projects. And why have you had the switch to doing projects where you sell at the end as opposed to keeping for longer?
So I think we like to keep the smaller stuff. The bigger stuff, like the ones where we've got in Yorkshire and Lancashire, we may end up keeping those. The one in Lancashire is just unbelievable. Like the spec of the build's crazy. Beautiful sort of apartments for 16 to 18 year olds leaving care. So we might keep that. The project that we're sat in now is obviously M1 in Manchester. This is the first project we've ever done where it will be private tenants and not supported. We sort of shifted and pivoted a little bit when the supported living industry collapsed about 12 months ago, just to obviously secure sort of the business. So we will be selling these. I don't really want to keep any properties in central Manchester. you speak to me in 10 years' time, might be the biggest mistake I've ever made. But it's good cash, and it's just building the cash flow up in the business again. And it's getting a balance. Like, you can't have a property company where you keep everything, in my opinion. I think sometimes you have to exit certain sites to keep your cash and just build the cash flow up again.
Yeah. I think, again, that's something where, particularly when you're coming in, you're building a portfolio, you can't understand why anyone sells. You just think, I just want to keep.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an element there of replenishing capital, isn't there, and making sure that you're not, well, obviously completely going to zero and bankrupt and what have you. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's good. I think we've covered a lot in terms of, obviously, what you've done so far, and it's amazing to see that you've done that within a 4-year period of time. Are there any particular skills or attributes that you think that you and your business partners have or have had to adopt in order to go from literally zero to that much growth in 4 years?
Yeah, I think one thing a little bit off that sort of question is, I don't want people to think that it's dead easy and you can raise a load of cash and you can go and buy a load of houses and everything's sweet and you have the best life ever. Like, it's not. It's so hard. You've got to be just relentless. It's like resilient. You come across big problems every single day. You know, your mental health suffers, sleepless nights, anxiety, like everything. Like, it's probably the hardest thing you could do to go from 0 to 100 so quick. So I don't want people to sit there and like glamorize it and think, oh, it's so easy, just bought a load of properties, and he makes it look easy on social media, because I like to think that I sort of show like a real side to it. But yeah, in terms of like the skill sets that me and my business partners have got, we all work on different things. We work well together. We disagree on some things, which is healthy. You need that, because we all have different mindsets of where you want to go, and I'm 100% full systems go. Adam and Alex are the opposite. They want to make sure that things are stable, but they still sort of got like a growth mindset where they still want the growth. So that's important. Like, if you've got a business partner, if you're lucky enough to have a business partner, having a good relationship with those is key. And I think one thing that I always mention to people is, in property, I have like 3 goals. I have one big goal, which is an overarching goal, which could be to build a property portfolio that sustains X amount per month and can sustain your lifestyle. And then I have 2 goals underneath that every day in property, you'll know, you're thinking about 100 different things. Like, you'll have 2 projects over there that you might have to ring council tax and utilities. Whereas for me, I just have two goals that I've got on a piece of paper, that every day I wake up and there's 2 things that I have to do today: find deals, raise money, and everything else will fall into place. And it's essentially just changing my mindset from like, shit, I've got so much stuff to do, to actually, if I strip it back, the only thing that gets me to my overarching goal is finding deals and raising finance. So it's making sure that your goals are simple and clear, and make sure that you've not got 100 different things that you're just always thinking about every single day.
And it sounds like you've got a brilliant relationship with your joint venture partners, your business partners. And do you think that therefore, like, the kind of different ways in which you operate and work is what's probably a benefit, I'm guessing, to you guys? Because I see a lot, obviously, people kind of joint venture with the same people, or people with the same money. And I always think it's a bit of an odd thing to do, because you're not really saving much other than putting in half the capital, but then you get half the returns. Yeah,
definitely.
Do you think that if you started from scratch, you'd go in with business partners again, or do you think you'd go alone?
Business partners again.
Yeah.
It enabled us to scale quicker. And I think something important to note is that the way we've been able to raise a lot of money and have a lot of sort of like business partnerships is, we are just normal lads. Like, there's 26-year-old lads from Manchester. We're transparent. The way we work with people, we lost 10 grand on our first ever deal that we sourced. We sourced a Serco HMO, got the source fee, charged a project management fee. The project went 10k over budget, what we told the investor was going to be. This was like 4 years ago, and we didn't really know how to quote refurbs. And we stomached that 10 grand. We didn't go back to the investor and ask for more money. That builds credibility, and we've always done that. We've never gone back to people and asked for more money. And it's just, I guess, that then builds good partnerships, and it allows people to trust you to do more projects. But yeah, business partnerships are great. Like you said, you do get half the profit. It still takes you the same amount of time, but it means that you can do 2 or 3 at once rather than just one. But again, we've loaned cash rather than joint venture in the past. We've loaned money off people, and that works as well. Both work. And I think what we do is we juggle both. We have some joint ventures going on, and then we loan cash and have those projects where we get all the profit minus interest. So it's a mixture of both.
No, I think it's really interesting to hear your views on that, and I think the scalability is definitely a big advantage. Going back then to the two things you mentioned, your 2 main focuses. You've got the overarching goal. You're pushing into your 2 main jobs, right? The first one was finding deals. What do you actively do to find deals? What are the main areas you put your time and focus?
So for me, it's not online portals, it's not Rightmove, Zoopla, etc. It's building my network of sourcing agents. Sources are great. Use a sourcer. Like, I'd rather me focus on raising finance and working with a sourcer rather than me doing 100 viewings to get one property, because it's time. I can spend that time better raising finance, for example. So building my network of sourcers, of agents, like you said, cash buying companies and traders and things like that, and just speaking to people and just getting into the market, telling people what you're looking for. Social media is big. LinkedIn. From the start, 95% of our business was LinkedIn. And in terms of finding deals and raising finance and finding investors.
So you've even found deals on LinkedIn?
Yeah. I think I met the agent that we bought this in Manchester off LinkedIn. And we're now good friends and we'll do loads of business together going forward. But that came from LinkedIn.
So it's all network, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just networking, spending my time speaking to people, building relationships, rather than doing hundreds of viewings and taking donuts into estate agents and things like that. Both work, but that one works for me.
I think yours is more scalable. I think yours is more realistic to actually have a bigger outcome, right? Particularly with the kind of deals you're looking for. Because when I'm like working with people that are looking to get their first one, sometimes I will say to them, look, you're making it too complex. Use the online portals because they're all motivated sellers. Work with sources because they find deals. Whereas obviously the bigger you get, obviously the more likely it is to actually come from a network, right? So that's really, really interesting to hear. And then in terms of obviously the other side of it, the raising finance, again, I think possibly it's kind of answered in that first one as well, but where are you finding the finance for these projects?
Good way of finding finance is deal sourcing, in my opinion. Our first ever investor that lent us multi-7 figures in one transaction was from deal sourcing. We sourced them a deal. And it's a great way. You're already speaking to the investor because you're selling them a deal. And it's just flipping your mindset and their mindset from how can I make $5,000 to how can I get involved in the deal and make $25,000. So deal sourcing is a great way to find investors that you can actually raise finance through. We've raised over 5 million quid from LinkedIn. Right. Again, different sort of social media platforms are used for different things. LinkedIn, you've got high net worth, you've got business professionals on there, doctors, dentists, surgeons, accountants, lawyers, everything. You can filter by location, so filter by central London. Chances are a lawyer in central London is probably sitting on a $300,000 a year job. We've raised finance from places like Dubai. So it's kind of just following where the money goes. Speaking to people, and one thing I always say is I don't find finance at property networking events because you just get pitched at by insurance brokers or mortgage brokers. I find finance over going out for dinner and drinks and going to the races and having like meaningful chats with people, understanding what they want to do, how much cash they've got, how they want to use it.
Building trust as well.
Yeah, building trust, and you don't really build trust and relationships at those networking events. You build them at actually going out for a beer with someone and just being a normal person.
Actually just talking about normal things, isn't
it?
Exactly. I always found when I was starting out and I would go to a networking event, I would be stood across from someone who had exactly the same intention as me. I've come here to raise money and you've come here to raise money, so where's the money? You know?
It's crazy, isn't it? And like business networking events, they're great events to go to, like business ones where they've got events in central Manchester where it's like accountancy events.
Yes.
Get into those events.
Yeah.
I live South Manchester in Cheshire. That's where a lot of footballers live. I will go into nice cafes, restaurants, and you'll see people sat there that have got money that you might be able to speak to.
Yeah.
Just putting yourself around people that have got cash.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Like, cafes, like gyms.
Gym's perfect.
Yeah.
I joined a country club.
Yeah.
Down in South Manchester. If there's a country club there where it's £200 a month and it's like £1,000 joining fee, and they've got 500 members, that's 500 people that can afford to pay X amount per month. They've obviously got money. You go in a car park and there's Lamborghinis and Ferraris there, and you're thinking like, wow, this is crazy. But like, if you're sat in a sauna with these people, or you're sat in the infinity pool at the top, they want to speak. And one thing I always think about is people that aren't in property always want to be in property.
It's true.
It's quite a sexy industry. People like it. People want to learn about it. They want to know about it. So they'll actually be buzzing to speak to you about property.
Yeah, you have so many people that have made, hundreds or hundreds of thousands or millions in their industry, and yet they still want to do the property deals, don't they?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And when you're in those environments of people, you're often talking about things to do with business because that's the way that the mindset works of those people, isn't it? So great excuse to join a country club, isn't it? So, no, brilliant. Okay, so just I guess going into the mindset side of things more. If you were starting again from zero, because quite a few people watching this could be at zero or could be certainly at the beginning of their portfolio, where would you, A, what strategy would you do, and B, where would you put your time and focus?
So I'd focus on, starting from scratch, deal sourcing.
Yep.
And then a relentless focus on raising finance to buy the assets yourself. From a mindset point of view, be relentless. I get people saying, I've spoken to 100 investors and I've not raised any money. Well, you need to speak to 1,000. It's a numbers game.
Volume.
And obviously you approach people in a personalised manner, you're not just spamming them, but it's the whole input-output equation. You get out what you put in.
Yeah.
And it's just being relentless. You're going to get no's, you're going to have setbacks, you're going to make mistakes, but just keep going.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Like, I'm no different, and me and my business partner say all the time, we are no different to the standard 26-year-old living in the UK. We're no different. We've not got a silver spoon, we've not got anything. We would have worked harder than everybody else at that time, but people can still do that now and get to where we are. You
were willing to do the volume, get the no's, and keep going.
Exactly, yeah. You've just got to be willing to do it, and sacrifice is a big thing. Friendship groups that I was part of that I'm not part of anymore, just because I can't sit down and have a conversation. We're not aligned on what we want to do in life. So you've got to make sacrifices.
Would you recommend actively trying to get yourself out of those groups? If someone's watching this and they're in a group and they think probably isn't adding value to my life, would you actively recommend them to get out of those groups?
For me, it was just a natural process.
Right.
I just wasn't meeting up with them because the things that they were doing wasn't what I wanted to do. So maybe not like actively saying like, fuck you all, I'm out. But just, it will happen naturally anyway. And don't try to force yourself to do something that you don't want to do. If you don't, I love going to the pub on a Friday and Saturday and having beers, but like, if that means that you're out till 4 a.m. and you're only doing that because your friends are doing that and you don't actually want to do that, then just don't do it.
It's balance, right? Because on one side you could then go too much into it, and you're then in bed at 9 p.m. with your monitoring your sleep, or you've got the person out till 4. And I think it's good to remain a normal person, have a beer or two, relax, enjoy your weekends and what have you, but then also know where your priorities are, isn't it? So,
and I don't have people look at other people. I'm not saying that I'm successful. Someone might look at me as being fairly successful in property from what we've purchased, but I have no special formula. I don't go bed at a certain time. I don't wake up at a certain time. I don't have, I don't track my sleep. I don't have a certain diet. I don't really go to the gym. And it's just what works for you. You've just got to be a normal person. I don't want to go to the gym, so I'm not going to go to the gym. You don't have to be perfect shaped bodybuilder to be a property investor.
No, thankfully for me.
Yeah, I know, likewise, mate.
Let's finish on your journey. What does, let's say, the next 5 years look like? I know that you're going to be in property for a long time. You've probably got some big ambitions, but what does the next 5 years look like?
We used to want to build skyscrapers, and we don't want to do that anymore. We were speaking before the podcast of actually capitalising on like the long tail, what we call it, keeping things simple. Again, we've always known that time in the market is the biggest thing. And so it's just building our portfolio to, we probably want another 75 properties in there over the next 5 years. Have a 100 property portfolio that over time will cash flow us and go up in value. I think chucking in flips every now and again. Everyone loves a flip, it's fun. You know, projects like this, commercial to resi projects, not necessarily getting any bigger than this, because bigger projects, bigger risk, bigger problems, as we've found out. Just keeping things nice and sustainable, enjoying it, have a good lifestyle around it, just enjoying it really. Got to enjoy the journey, or you just won't stick it out for another 5 years. Yeah. And don't put too much pressure on yourself.
No, I really respect that, because I'm not at the I need to earn 100 million, but I'm also like, I need to do well, kind of. So I think you kind of sit very much within that, and you've pushed well high already for considering your age and years in the game. So
yeah.
No, I think what you said today is brilliant. There's so much value that people can take from it, and I really appreciate your time. I think the main two places for people to find you are Instagram and LinkedIn. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll link them below. And just want to say thank you again for your time. Thanks for coming on, and great to meet you in person.
Good to meet you.
Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.